probably put together what we think is the best content program that we've done so far in this, since we've been doing this for the last 5 or 6 years. So I'm going to just try to get everything kicked off. We've got a pretty tight schedule today. And what I thought I would start out by saying is, at the conclusion of this conference last year, we got together back in the office and we were trying to think about what the theme for this event might be this year. And as we were batting around different ideas, a lot of which were included in the comment review forms that you all filled out, this idea of the new normal kept re-emerging. And the essence of the idea was that people generally felt that the economy was not going to come back and rescue us, but that we might be going into a fairly sustained period of time that's just going to be different from an activity standpoint than the previous 5 or 6 years was. So as the course of 2009 continued to play out, it seemed like that continued to be the case, and we eventually decided to settle in on the theme of this program being the new normal. And what we've got together here today and tomorrow, I think, is probably the best collection of speakers that are going to talk about the new normal as it relates to the commercial real estate world that we've certainly ever had in this event. And over the course of the next day and a half, I think all these folks are going to touch on their own personal and professional feelings about what the future is going to look like and how they would probably define the new normal. So what I thought I could do in my opening comments here is really 2 things. The first is just give you a very high overview of what we're thinking about in EDR in terms of what our future might look like as a company that's obviously exposed to the commercial real estate markets, and how we're using this information to try to plan for what the next 3 or 4 years might look like for us. And there's a couple of very basic assumptions that we're making. None of this is rocket science, and none of this is certainly going to be anything new to anybody in this room. The first is, I think, we're probably going to go into a period of time, we already started it, which is not going to be recessionary. The economy is beginning to expand, and we expect that to probably continue for the next several years. That said, another major characteristic of the short-term future is just bigger and bigger and bigger government, and we're not expecting that to change at all. And a lot of folks who have exposure to the federal government are now beginning to realize that that might end up being, at the end of the day, one of the best customers to possibly have for the next several years. And then the final thing, and this is something that of all the real estate conferences I go to and the commercial real estate finance conferences I go to, everybody's talking about this number here, this $1+ trillion worth of commercial real estate debt that has to figure out a way to get refinanced between now and 2012. So this is super high level stuff. All the speakers are going to talk in much more detail about what's actually happening. But just as sort of a backdrop, these are the things that we're thinking about in EDR. And as a result, when we try to plan for our future, the things that we need to do from a strategic standpoint, we're just going to make the general assumption that there's probably going to be very little to no expansion in the markets that we serve, at least in terms of transactions. And what that means at the end of the day is we're going to assume that the economy is not going to rush back and save us. There's not going to be a rising tide, lifting all boats type of a situation. If that happens, great, we'll do that as icing on the cake. But at the end of the day, if we want to grow and meet our own growth expectations, we need to understand you folks better, what your business needs and business problems are, try to figure out ways that we can help deliver value to you and make your businesses better, and innovate across every business that we're a part of. So that's sort of the very, very high overview from EDR, the company that's in the commercial environmental risk management business. But as you also know, there's a different aspect of EDR, which is we are owned by a global media company, the Daily Mail and General Trust. And we are one of many companies within this global portfolio that has great exposure to the property markets. And so, as a company that's also a media business, that's a publisher of software and information services, we get together and we have the opportunity to talk to our peers throughout the group about what's happening in the media world and how is media being impacted by the property and the property finance markets. And so what I thought I could do here for the first with you a little bit of a different perspective that's outside of the world that we're all focused in every day. And then conclude with just posing a couple of general questions for everybody to sort of consider as the next 2 days plays out. So one of the things where everything always should start is, well, what do customers want? And when I say customers in this context, I'm talking about people who consume information, okay? And consumers of property information really want three things. They want more and more information. They want more content. They want it earlier. Specifically, they want it earlier in the property search process. And then at the end of this, they want to have access to experts. And where you really see this having begun is more in the B2C world. And it's beginning to trickle down into the publishers of business-based information. And so to try to illustrate this point, I bring up Trulia here, who a lot of you are probably familiar with, a US-based B2C property listing company. And like a lot of these listing companies, you can go to their site, you can input an area of the country that you want to conduct a search for homes. This is Las Vegas. And you will get search results back. And over the last 5 or 6 or 7 years, everybody's probably noticed that more and more information has been included in this consumer search experience. But one of the things they've done fairly recently is they've added this Find a Pro feature. Okay? And if you click on this, you begin to go into a little bit of a different experience where you can select different types of professionals who might have some local area knowledge or even property-specific knowledge. So in this case, they've got some drop-down menus, and I happen to look for home inspectors. And for Las Vegas, Nevada, there's 2 firms that have taken advantage of the functionality that Trulia has set up here, which is really sort of remarkable and disappointing in some ways, because Trulia, just some of the background on this company, they're now serving about 6 million unique visitors per month right now. And on occasion, they surpass Realtor.com as the top consumer listing website that there is. And yet, despite the massive amount of traffic they have, in Las Vegas anyway, you've only got 2 local home inspection firms who are figuring out how to take advantage of the traffic that Trulia is generating because of the content that's available on their site. And so if you click on any one of these 2 home inspectors, you can dive into a detail page and find out more information about the home inspector and even reach out and contact this local expert. So sort of an interesting, relatively new process where the media company is trying to connect together the consumer of the information, the property-related information, and local experts who might know something and be able to, be in a position to answer a consumer's question. This is not the only place that this is happening. You can go on a number of both B2B and B2C websites today where valuable information is being published and see media companies beginning to experiment with this notion of connecting the consumer of information with an expert. It's happening in the B2B world and the B2C world. It's happening with a lot of property-related information companies. Probably the best example of it that I've seen is some of the things, if you want to check it out in your own time, that Ancestry.com is doing some very creative ways to try to connect their customers with experts that help them complete a project.